Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, friends. Good evening. I am so excited. Today is a fun day in Taylor, Texas. Actually, it's a fun day all over Central Texas because there's something exciting happening today. It is the launch day of a brand new book called Boat Burning for Beginners. And I am so excited to get to share that with you guys. I feel like in our lives, sometimes we need to see somebody else charting the course, moving ahead so that we know that it can be done. I think often of the man who broke the 4-minute mile. You know, Sometimes in life there are some things that are out there, some dreams that we have, some visions in our heart, but until somebody breaks a barrier or does something that seems like the impossible and they accomplish it, we don't think that it's possible. And that's one of the things that our Boat Burning for Beginners book is all about. It's all about showing how some very successful businesswomen have left their 9 to 5 corporate jobs, or what we like to call golden handcuffs, and really ventured into the entrepreneur world. And so today, while I'm celebrating in Taylor, Texas, I have a good friend of mine, partner in crime, Ms. Jerry DeVita here, who is a co-author in this book. And you guys, she last week shared her story on a stage in a live audience, and her story is moving and it's powerful. And if potentially you're looking for somebody to break that barrier, to cross that bridge, to beat that 4-minute mile, her story is one that does that for us. So I want to introduce my friend Jerry DeVita, who is out making things happen and who is celebrating with me today with the launch of our new book. So hello, Jerry.
Hi.
Yay!
Yay.
I know
Excited
you're
to be
so
here.
excited. Oh my God. Like here it is in the print. It smells like a new book. It feels like a new book, and it has your chapter
Pictures,
in it.
our chapter, our pictures, our story.
Yes, yes. Jerry, I know that your story is a powerful one. And I know that people are going to be moved when they read your story. I know as they heard your story on the Unbreakable stage last week, we went through all the emotions with you. And what I'm mostly impressed by is the fact that you took all of these painful moments in life and you've now used them to lift others up and to help them get a fresh slate. And one of the things that, spoiler alert, is you break the mold as how we feel about statistics. And what statistics mean. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing these days and what it felt like to launch a book about your journey.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm super excited to be a partner with yours on this journey. Um, yeah, so if we go back in time, right? 14 and pregnant and a mommy
Yeah.
at age 15, thinking there's nothing for my life. Where's it going to go? High school dropout,
Right.
at home raising a baby.
Yeah.
And I was able to overcome that by some life choices. And one of the things that I say is that pain doesn't define you. It's how you choose to move through that pain.
Hmm.
And so I never thought if I look back at what happened then, would I be here today?
Sure.
Never
Sure.
thought it would happen.
Yeah.
Right. Successful career. And now, working on our nonprofit, which we founded 3 years ago and really trying to give back to community, but successfully able to retire and
Mm.
have financial freedom has been amazing.
Yeah. And this journey really to thrive for life is a fairly new journey. I mean, like you said, 3 years. And but you took a plunge where not too long before you were like, there's no way I could leave this job, right? I remember my time when I was in the banking world, and and the name of this book is Boat Burning for Beginners. And people are like, "Well, how in the world did you come up with that name?" Well,
I was one of those.
yeah. Well, the truth is there is the story about Cortez, and Cortez. I am going to get the story messed up, so just go back and fact check me. It's fine. I want you to get the principle,
Right.
not the facts. Right? You can go back and fact check. But the understanding and the story, the meaning behind the story of burning the ships is when Cortez's army was going in to conquer new land, right? He was, I think he was from the Spanish army, and he was going
Yeah.
into a new land, and he's like, we've got to conquer this land. We want to claim it and we want to take it back to Spain. Well, he quickly realized they weren't sending reinforcements, right? And in that process of not getting reinforcements, he had a decision that he had to make. He said, we are either going to literally conquer this land, or we're going to die trying, because there is no retreat, there is no surrender. And when I think about the spirit of an entrepreneur or somebody that has that burning desire within them to conquer territories that maybe they never thought possible, and without the support, because I don't know about you, but when I left to go to say I'm leaving the bank and I'm going to go do this chimney sweep and Mary Kay thing, like they were like, okay, good job. And then that was it. Like there was no reinforcements, right? It was like, I think she's a little crazy, right? There was no reinforcement. But I had to make a decision. And in fact, I did. I made a decision to cut off my insurance license, to not renew my securities license. I burned the ship.
Yep.
Right. And I know that in the comfort and the flexibility of, of a career, of a job that seems to be stable and that has given you some great financial, I don't want to say freedom because you were not free at that moment,
Right. Not at
right?
all.
But some maybe financial stability or an illusion of financial stability, right?
Well, I was gonna say it's all fake, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most Americans, and we were guilty of this ourselves for many years, and I still have to keep myself in check with it because it still sits in the back of my mind,
Yeah.
is you think you've arrived, you have the security of a job, but do we really?
Right.
We
Right.
don't.
Right.
Texas is an at-will state, as many other states, and the economy goes up and down and fluctuates. So
Right.
you don't have that. But at the moment you think you do,
Right.
you're spending your living life.
Mhm.
That was us.
Mhm.
At age 55, we had $350,000 worth of debt, and we
Yeah.
just kept going, how can one retire when our property taxes, for goodness sakes, were 10,000 a year in the early 2000s? They're over 25,000 a year now. When I went out and looked this up actually after last week,
Wow.
and I calculated that by some of the things that we did to really adjust our lifestyle
Yeah.
to what made us feel comfortable and financially free, not what society says, we saved at least $350,000. That
What you were in debt.
what we were
Yeah.
in debt. Isn't that
Wow.
insane? Like I
Wow.
calculated that number this weekend.
Wow. How did that feel
It
to
felt
look back?
good.
Yeah.
I was speaking with my husband David about it, and we were just I said, it's at minimum this much.
Wow.
And I didn't even calculate what we saved with our property where we live with some of the things we had done there. So I think it's actually closer to 500,000,
Wow.
which if you go back in time and if you learn the principles
Yeah.
that Thrive for Life is teaching now, think about the debt that you avoid taking on,
Sure.
the stress to your family,
Sure.
the stress of, God forbid we have another pandemic, I have to make a choice about things. Today,
Right.
people making choices about food
Right.
and medical,
Right.
right?
Medical for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And food. I mean, we're sacrificing the quality of food for sure.
Yeah.
And I think so, Jerry. I'm not going to say numbers, but you kind of alluded to one.
It's okay.
But when you look back 50 years ago at the 15-year-old version of you who thought, I'm a statistic, and you look at what the challenges that you went through, and many of them are written in your chapter,
Yes.
and you look at who you are today, what would you say to that 15-year-old girl?
You got it. Persevere. Don't listen to what people are saying. Get them naysayers out of your head. Pull
Mm,
them off your shoulders. It's hard to say that,
yeah.
but just keep looking forward that you have it. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You're going to go up and down. You're going to make bad choices. You just pick back up and keep looking forward.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a victory dance for sure, right? And you
Yes.
look back and you're like, now I get to break the mold on what statistics look like. Now I get to help other people be the other statistic. So at that point in life, you were like, I'm a statistic, which means XYZ. Now you're like, I'm a one percenter,
Mhm.
right?
I'm a new statistic, a
Yes,
good
I'm
one.
a new statistic. Yes. But would that statistic, would that journey have happened if it wouldn't have been through some of the painful things that you went through?
No, and in our conversations, we've been known each other for a while, right? Was
Yeah,
just going through and looking at those key points through my life where I decisions, right? Key
sure.
decisions.
Hmm.
Every single one had to do with finances.
Yeah,
I didn't want to get divorced because I
yeah,
couldn't afford didn't think I could afford to take care of my 2 young children and myself. How
right,
was I gonna do it?
right,
Moving to Texas and not having a job. What if I didn't like it?
right.
Right? And the loss of a son, which is in there as well, but having to cope that and through myself and my work became my identity,
Hmm.
which is not my identity
No,
at all,
no.
right? And so when I look through all of these components, finances were key.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
yeah,
And now, part of your burning the ship, leaving something which seemed it had the illusion of security, right? At
yeah.
a time, by the way, when nothing was secure, like you left in the middle of the pandemic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But what helped is that I knew we had the financial security behind us.
Right.
We had paid down the debt. We had built a portfolio of investments.
Yeah.
We've been working and coaching others on how to do the same.
Right.
So I wasn't worried.
Right.
Not many people can say that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, for myself and my husband, when we went into entrepreneurship, we also had a financial backing. And one of the questions I think that people have a lot of times is, gosh, I really have this vision for a small business, or I have this dream in my heart of something that I want to start. And, I think that even, we talked about society earlier, about how society creates this belief that you have to have all these things, right? I think society also creates this belief, and through that, a lot of social media and things like that, this belief that you have to be successful day one, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to one of my favorite videos that I've ever watched of all time was Steve Harvey, and he talks about jump, which is very similar to burn the ships. Like, it's kind of that thing. But I think it's okay to have some bumper lanes up, right? If you're going to go bowling, you're going to put some bumper lanes up, and if you're going to leave a job, it's smart to do some due diligence, to read books like this, to get
Yes.
that inspiration, to, start working that side gig a little bit before you completely burn the ship. Like, before I left the bank and quote unquote burnt my ships, we had a business that I could plug my skills into. The I knew how to manage people. Now, I didn't want to manage people. That's part of the reason I was unhappy in my job. But I knew I could, and I knew I had something to fall back on. You just said yourself, you had some financial stability because you had built it up. You had gotten yourself out of debt before you left the career world, right?
Right.
So, by no stretch of the imagination should you be hearing from Jerry and I that we want you to believe that you just reckless abandon, right? Like that we don't
Yeah.
do things like that. But I do believe that within each of us there is a desire and there's purpose. And as with you see with Jerry's story, her purpose was always attached to that financial fear and financial obligation, things that kept her stuck. For me, it was always fear of, I actually had quite a few fears that I didn't even know I had. One was fear of failure, the other was fear of success. And how do you have both of those at the same time? Well, if success means spotlight and spotlight means somebody can find out about your past,
Yeah.
that could create fear of success, right?
Right.
And so for me, while I didn't necessarily have this multi-million dollar portfolio to back me, one of the things I immediately started doing was self-help. I really immediately went into life coaching, support, rediscovering who I was. And so my chapter really talks about how, when I left and when I burnt the ship, I dug into self-improvement. I
Mhm.
dug into, okay, who is Teresa Port anyway? And what is this powerhouse behind her that has this beautiful light to shine in the world? And how do I expose that and let go of those two fears, the fear of failure and the fear of success?
Right.
So I just wanted to add that because while this is called boat burning for beginners, and it truly is about, to some degree, all in, like we're going to be all in. That doesn't mean you go all in with reckless abandon. It doesn't mean you go all in without doing some due diligence, without having a mentor, without locking arms with people
Yeah.
like Jerry and Thrive for Life to say, hey, if this is something you want, fantastic. Let's get your financial picture in order so you've got the comfort and the flexibility so that the minute that you start hearing the word retreat, retreat, which happens, right?
Yeah.
That you've got that financial security and or proof in understanding who you are, like working with somebody like Unbreakable, so that you're not running back the minute something gets hard.
I mean, so it definitely was not an easy path.
Yeah.
And I definitely had started a few businesses before, but I did this while I worked,
Right. Right.
right?
And
Because
that's
we
so
needed the
smart.
security.
Right.
I didn't have the savings to support us to go start something and be able to live the way we needed to live for a couple of years while you grow a business.
Right.
And there were failures. There were, ones that did good for a while, but then I got scared.
Sure.
And I said, "Nope, okay, 2008, the market dropped. I don't wanna travel full time again." So I
Right.
had to make some choices.
Right.
But the entrepreneurial just stuck in me, and while I did get some of that in corporate
Right.
towards the end, it I could see I was getting to the end,
Right.
and I deeply went straight into education. Everything I do, I go to education,
Yeah.
and I seek really good mentors. And it's in little pieces. So while we built our portfolio, it's let's start with single family housing. Let's start with flips. Let's start with,
Yeah.
moving on down with, different portions of the strategies.
Right. Right.
We've applied them all and we pivot and we still have to pivot today because just because we have this portfolio of what is ours and what we manage doesn't mean it's going to be there tomorrow. So I still have that skepticism
Sure. Sure.
to always protect and guard and change and pivot and do what we need to do, and that'll never go
Absolutely.
away.
Well, and I think that's also, having due diligence and knowing that there's fluctuations in everything. One of the first lessons you'll learn if you go to business school or even get a mentor is that there's seasonality in all business, right?
Yes.
And not only is there seasons in the startup phase and the plateau phase and the succession phase, but there's also seasonal businesses. And that was something that
Yeah.
we really had to deal with at our household because we own a chimney company in Austin, Texas. Like, hello.
You don't
Um,
need it now at 105.
no, but you do need a really good air duct cleaning.
That's true.
Right. And so, it's learning those things and then locking arms with professionals, like you said. In this book, not only is your chapter and my chapter, The Elephant's Graveyard, in there, but there's 9 different stories.
Yes.
And I love, we were talking,
Really successful women that have just come
yes.
from nothing and pulled this together as well.
Yeah. And I would say that's one thing too is, success doesn't come with a silver spoon, and sometimes you'll find great people that, just they've had opportunities awarded to them. But a lot of us didn't have opportunities awarded to us. We chose to seize the day. We chose to burn the
Mhm.
ship, right? And there's a level of tenacity and grit that backs us, right? And then there's also relationships and bonds. And one of the things that I had to learn as I burned the ship is that my circle changed,
Yes.
right? I didn't have that work circle anymore, although I didn't really have one anyway because I was the leader, right?
But
But
wasn't it still your identity at
it
some point? You're
yeah,
right, as you were working
100%.
through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and as you start, burning the ship, some people are going to think maybe like they did with me, like you're going to leave the bank and sell lipstick. Like, what's that about? Right. you know, and I'm sure that people who are skeptical about things because of their own fears and insecurities, a lot of times feel like it's their job to protect you. Right.
Yes.
And with that protection, they may say things that cast fear or whatever. And that's where you really need to embrace yourself around other people who have ran that 4-minute mile and made success with it, right?
Absolutely. Every
Yeah,
day. And mentors change as you change and
absolutely.
you grow. You need to continue to seek,
Yeah.
new
New
mentors.
mentors because you're at a new level, right?
Yes.
Each time we elevate to a new level, we bring somebody else on our team. And that doesn't mean that the other person isn't valuable, but it means that they can take somebody on and bring them
Right.
up to that level, right? We're constantly evolving, hopefully, and constantly growing. And I don't know. I I'm number one, super excited to have this book with you, like to
I
have our
know.
names next to each other on it and to know that our stories are going to reach so many people.
What was exciting speaking last week is after the fact, I had a
Mhm.
woman come up just bawling, just crying. And she's like, I need you. I need your program. I need to know how to get my hands on my finances and how to handle
Right.
it.
Right.
Everywhere I travel, even last month in an airport, people sitting there talking about it. I actually interjected, but that's me. I was
Well,
like, "You're right, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we're trying to solve."
right.
It's not taught to anybody anymore.
Right. Right. Well, and I'm also super grateful and blessed that Thrive for Life is a partner with Unbreakable
Yes.
Enterprises through a pillar program that we've established, and we're creating a co-branded program called Unbreakable Wealth. Which really takes your foundation course and allows people to have it in kind of micro pieces, right?
Yep.
Which is a lot of times all we can handle anyway, right?
Yeah,
We need to take things in small pieces so we can have some action steps. One of my favorite things to say is education without activation is wasted brain space.
and that's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
And we don't need any other noise going on up in there, right? No,
Right.
no more things screaming at us. But applicable steps that we can take to put us in a direction that you can track. And I know one of the things I love about you, Jerry, and completely appreciate is your ability and desire to track.
Yes.
Like to track. And I'm like, yes, I need that in my life. Can you track me? I need a
Well,
GPS for me to track me. It's called yeah.
yeah. Well, one of my mentors early on through my life coaching training that I went through, because I had to fix me. I
Yeah.
had to fix my mind, right?
Right.
The mindset of what everything was. And when you're running a business, whether it's selling lipstick, or your customers at the chimney,
Yep.
or me training, right?
Right.
And you need to know your success rate.
Right.
How is it working? What do you need to tweak? What's going on? Because if you don't know that baseline, if you're running a business and you're selling something,
Sure.
you don't know how to improve and how to grow.
Absolutely.
So I had hired someone, we have an RV park, and I was trying to figure out why is the phone not ringing?
Yeah.
And I had someone look at the website, and I actually had all of my numbers. Here's how many people that call. Here's how many calls I get a day. Here's how many I've converted into, RV spot, and they were shocked.
Wow. Yeah. And you can teach that.
Yeah,
You teach that from the lens of finance, but that can transition to every
anything.
area of our
Yeah.
life. Yes. 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 Well, friends, we know that you've got a couple more hours to grab your 99-cent copy
Yes.
of our Amazon book.
Get
And
it.
I will tell you this,
This one.
by you purchasing a copy of the Amazon book today on the boat burning book today on Amazon, it helps us reach bestseller status. And we're going to ask you to take a few moments to go onto Amazon, spend the 99 cents, download the copy, read it for yourself, share it with somebody else because the principles that are in here are life-giving and they will give hope. And they may just happen to be the golden ticket that somebody else was looking for to give them the momentum, the strength to say, oh, if if they can do it, I bet I could do it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've read through this book, and some of the early chapters and how it's taken shape has been an amazing process.
Yeah.
But every one, it's inspirational.
Mhm.
Even some of the stories that I've read in here have inspired me to
Right.
want to do more and do better.
Yeah. It's incredible. Iron sharpens iron, right? And
Yep.
when you've got somebody with that entrepreneur spirit, they literally have that fire burning in them, and their fire can light a fire in somebody else. Hence, the boat burning for beginners and the flame. So, friends, thank you for joining Jerry and I today. If you want to connect further with Jerry and learn about her Thrive for Life platform and her programs, please check out the link below. You can also check out our joint programs at myunbreakable-life.com. And again, we will send up the Boat Burning for Beginners so you can grab your copy and start burning the ships. So
Awesome.
thank you for watching,
Thank you.
friends. We'll see
Thanks
you
for
soon.
having